tell me that this wasn't on purpose. She knew exactly what she was doing here. Now, the question from Prince Harry and Meghan Markle at all about the lies that destroyed the final days of the election.
And it's very interesting to work that out. There's two things, I think. One is that she was determined to...
Welcome back to Hollywood today. They cried out for privacy, then turned their whole life inside out for a Netflix show. They preached to the world about being real, but dodged the simplest questions. And here's the most bizarre part, the one subject they absolutely refuse to discuss. Their own kids. Think about it for a second. Most parents can't shut up about their kids. But Harry and Meghan, complete silence, exactly where it matters. The staged photo shoots, the carefully choreographed moments, the $1 billion image they built together. It's all starting to crack, and what's beneath could be the biggest royal scandal in decades. Buckle up, because this is about to go much darker than you think. Before we get any further, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, and turn on notifications. Because what's coming next is just plain bonkers. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. One word was spoken, and suddenly, boom, the whole studio dynamic changed. Hosts froze. Camera operators stopped moving. You could feel it. Okay, let's get into this. Their wedding anniversary is coming up, right? Everyone's waiting for the usual drill. You know the drill, the Instagram. Perfect photos, perhaps a heartwarming family photo, a strategic weir. Still here post. That's been their recipe for success for years. Every achievement, every victory, every breath is shared with perfect lighting and a moving caption. They've literally made a living off of moments such as these. But this time, nothing. Not a peep. No posts from them. No congratulatory messages from the royal family. Not even their Hollywood friends felt the need to leave a message. And let's remember, these are individuals who have never been able to resist a camera or a headline. Think back to the strategically timed announcements, the PR opportunities planned to the minute. Yeah, none of that. Total silence. People on set allegedly being told, for God's sake, don't say anything. Complete and utter silence. And here's the kicker. The same couple who made a living off of attention, who couldn't go a week without being featured in headlines, were suddenly ignored. Their anniversary came and went like it was nothing. No trending topics. No photo spreads in glossy magazines. No entertainment news segments. Nothing. It was as if the world had just blinked them out of existence. And that's, I think, the brutal part. It wasn't an accident, a choice for privacy the usual way it goes. That's the world voting, actively choosing not to look. The couple who used to steer the national conversation, that would have a single interview and make 1,000 takes, had slipped into irrelevance. That sting has to hurt. Picture it, your average morning show, bright lights, smiling hosts, chatter about royals mixed with a dash of celebrity gossip. The two who, not so very long ago, walked away from the royal fold to shape and tell their own story, to own their image and command the spotlight. For a little while, it worked. Netflix checks, Spotify deals, everyone chasing the Sussex brand. Then today, their anniversary barely registers, not even a ripple, and this moment lays it bare. Take away the PR machines, the polished lines, the business partners. What is left, apparently, not much. No real support from the industry they clung to. No kind words from the family they painted as villains. Just emptiness. A void where celebration should have been. It wasn't just some forgotten date. This was a warning. A peek behind the curtain at what transpires when people stop buying your story. When even the most loyal retreat from the recycled drama. That silence wasn't gentle. It felt ruthless. Like the universe saying, "We're done listening." You can almost see them refreshing feeds, hoping for something. Any message, any headline, any nod. But nothing came. The world had moved on, and for two people whose very identity depends on being seen, being heard, being relevant, that kind of indifference is perhaps the cruelest punishment there is. Not hate, not critique, just nothing. Meanwhile, with the fate of their anniversary, the questions about Meghan Markle and the birth of Lilibet Diana Mountbatten, Windsor began to surface once more. Documents appeared. Long-time royal watchers, those who know how the machinery really runs, Meghan speaking up. Not in whispers, this time loudly, picking apart what millions had suspected for years. Royal births follow a system, a process that is ancient, hospital admission, medical staff, official records, and then the parents emerge with the baby, and they show the world. It's tradition, it's transparent, it's reassuring the whole nation that everything is on the up. And up, Kate did it 3 times, exhausted, probably with her hair looking like a mess. But she showed up. That's it, that's all. No questions asked. But with Meghan, none of the above. No hospital steps photo op, no clear timeline, no traditional process. And that's when every seasoned royal observer felt a collective chill. This wasn't the usual polite observation anymore. Something had changed. Instead, what we got was weird camera angles, photos that looked like they were staged to the nth degree, and a baby bump that seemed to morph from one day to the next. I mean it. Go back and look at the photos yourself. One day it's definitely there. The next day it looks like it's nowhere to be found. And then suddenly it's back again. People picked up on it, and once people picked up on it, they started asking questions. And here's the thing. Asking questions isn't some kind of crazy conspiracy theory. When you're part of a monarchy, when your kids could potentially be in line for the throne, transparency isn't optional. It's part of the deal. Every other royal mom knew this. They adhered to the rules because it's important. It's about trust. It's about public confidence. Meghan broke every single one of these rules, and Harry just went along with it, like it was no big deal. Of course, people began to wonder what was really going on. There was panic at Buckingham Palace over the birth certificates of Archie and Lilibet. Why all the secrecy about something that's so very normal? Why disregard traditions that have been put in place for a reason? And the more they defied these basic norms, the louder the rumors grew. Social media went into a frenzy. Discussion forums analyzed every single picture. Timelines were compared, and every single detail was checked. And not one thing matched for years. This conversation was lurking just below the surface. YouTubers discussed it. Royal enthusiasts raised an eyebrow. Bloggers connected the dots. But the mainstream media, they said nothing. Too dangerous. Too inflammatory. Too easy to just act like it wasn't happening until it couldn't be ignored anymore. The story got too big. The questions too loud. And what's wild is this wasn't coming from random internet trolls. These were people with real experience. Journalists who had covered royal births before. Insiders who knew what normal actually looked like. And they were all saying the same thing. Something here doesn't add up. The couple who built their entire brand around telling their truth suddenly refused to answer the one question people genuinely wanted clarity on. The irony is almost laughable. Harry and Meghan spent years doing interviews, podcasts, documentaries, constantly explaining their feelings, their struggles, their version of events. They wanted the world listening, but when it came to the one story that actually mattered for royal succession, complete shutdown, no explanations, no clear answers, just more posed photos and carefully crafted statements that said absolutely nothing. That's when people really started paying attention, because when you make transparency your entire identity, then hold a top-secret christening for your 21-month-old daughter and go silent on the biggest questions. Yeah, that looks suspicious, very suspicious. Now, you'd think when legitimate questions start coming in, the response would be simple. Handle it calmly. Provide some basic information. And that's it. That's what a confident person would do. That's what a person who has nothing to hide would do. Harry did the opposite. The man who said he left the royal family to get away from the media pressure attacked anyone who had the nerve to bring this up. And this wasn't a no-comment attack. This was a full-blown meltdown. Angry outbursts. Hot tempers. No control whatsoever. It looked like a man cornered with no way out. Nothing out of the ordinary. Until Angela Levin got a seat. And within minutes, the whole room was silent. Think about that. This is the same man who lectures others on mental health, openness, and honesty. This is the same man who talks about tearing down walls, but ask him about his own kids. Instant rage, and that tells people something. When a person gets this angry about a simple question, no one thinks, oh, he's just being protective. They think, what is he hiding? It only made things worse. Because here's what people saw. A man who wants privacy but never stops talking to the press. a man who talks about honesty but goes ballistic when asked honest questions. The scene of his outbursts, his defensive rantings, just fueled the fire he was so desperately trying to douse. And then, of course, there's Meghan missing in action, totally out of sight. Never out of mind. Because if this is indeed a united front, this perfect Sussex duo, then shouldn't Meghan be front and center beside him at all times? At least making some effort at speaking up at least some of the time. No, instead she's absent while he spins out of control for all to see. He's becoming more unstable by the minute. This just isn't a team. This is throwing another under the proverbial bus. What got my attention, though, was just how pathetic he looked. Not strong, not protective, not paternal. Just plain nutty, as if he were on his last rope with no clue how to wrangle things back to his point of view. Not that he had any point of view. Not that he ever did, because what everyone saw that evening wasn't protection. What everyone saw was pure panic. Panic that everyone else felt, and still feels, the plain truth. He brought this all on himself. He didn't have to act this way. He didn't have to become so indignant. He didn't have to become so defensive. Well, you see, if you become so defensive, so indignant, so angry, then you've basically just given everyone else around you a reason to believe there's something to defend. But that was only the beginning. Here's the good stuff. No one had asked for anything outrageous. No one had even wanted any intrusive information. All anyone wanted to know was the same old thing that any other member of any other royal family had gotten along with, from the very beginning. Basic transparency. But with each and every mention of the subject, there was a hard stop, shut down. Zero explanation, zero clarifications, zero let me clarify that for you. Zero nothing. At one point, a spokesperson from the Duke and Duchess of Sussex announced that their newborn was christened on Friday the 3rd of March. It was done, and you know what happens when you avoid answering simple questions. Well, people stop trusting you. They make their own minds fill in the blanks, and you can rest assured that it doth not work out well for you. Soon all eyes turned to Lilibet, and that's where the tension punched through. They'd named their daughter after the late Queen Elizabeth, one of the most deeply honored figures in modern history. That's no small thing. The name carries with it weight, meaning, and legacy, supposed to be a powerful tribute. But then, almost immediately, the obvious question came, was this really about the honor to the Queen? Or was this about using her name to bolster credibility? Think about it. If you truly want to honor someone, wouldn't you check in with them first? Reports even seem to indicate the Queen herself wasn't consulted. That isn't a tribute. That feels like appropriation. Taking someone's legacy and stitching it onto your own narrative. When Harry and Meghan marked Lilibet's first birthday with a carefully staged photo, it didn't settle anything. It ramped up the tension. Every dodge, every vague line, every time they dodged a direct question, only convinced more people that something big was being kept hidden. You can dodge a point only so many times before people stop calling it coincidence and start calling it deliberate. But what really made it feel odder was the pattern. This wasn't some singularly awkward moment they hoped to move past. It was steady, repeated, deliberate. People started sharing notes, revisiting timelines, pulling up old photos and statements. The deeper they looked, the murkier it got. Details that should have aligned didn't. Stories that should have stayed steady kept shifting. For a couple who spent years insisting on telling their story, shaping their narrative, and insisting on being heard, they suddenly seemed allergic to any answers about this one topic. What began as hushed curiosity blew up into full-blown discussion. Comment sections blew up. Forums mapped whole threads just to parse it all. And this wasn't born of cruelty or malice. People were genuinely confused. You present yourself as open and authentic, then go silent about the simplest questions regarding your own children. Eyebrows rise. Fast, and the silence didn't erase the issue. If anything, it amplified it, because now it wasn't just about the original questions, it became about why they wouldn't answer at all. What is so hard to explain? Really, what can be so tricky that plain, open transparency isn't even on the table? Those questions started to loom larger than the earlier ones. So let's lay out how royal births usually roll, because there is a long-standing routine that has been in place for decades. A royal baby arrives. The mother heads to the hospital, gives birth, and within a few hours, or at most a day, the parents step outside with the newborn. They present the baby to the world. They wave. They answer a couple quick questions, and that is it. Kate Middleton did this 3 times. She always looked worn out, understandably, since she'd just given birth. Hair a bit frazzled, makeup understated, but she stood there on the steps, holding each child. That moment isn't about glamour or convenience. It is about transparency. It is about tradition. It makes the public feel part of a major royal moment. That is why it exists. Not because it is easy, but because it serves a purpose. When that tradition broke, the fallout was predictable. It reassures the public. It preserves trust between the royal family and everyone watching. It is a straightforward way of saying, here is the baby, everything's legitimate, and we're sticking to the rules. Clear, direct, effective. Meghan threw that whole playbook out the window. She didn't just bend tradition, she rewrote it in a way nobody saw coming. Instead of clear hospital appearances, we got mixed signals, carefully choreographed images, photos that felt more like they were crafted by a Hollywood PR machine than snapped in the moment. Camera angles chosen to hide more than reveal. And then the baby bump became a mystery that left a lot of people genuinely puzzled. At one event, it looked one way. At the next, it looked entirely different, sometimes higher, sometimes lower. Sometimes it even seemed to shift in ways that, frankly, don't add up anatomically. The photos still exist. You can judge for yourself. The inconsistencies were obvious enough that even casual observers started sensing something off. And what about the medical confirmations? Usual is a press release from the hospital, a 3-line note from a doctor, paperwork, things that happen in all the cases. In Meghan's case, there was close to nothing. The language is sweeping and polished, but it has an undertone of subdued truth, revealing that you're basically watching a stage show that is being passed off as tradition. It has the look of a public relations exercise, not an actual tradition. Yes, the desire for privacy is legitimate, totally legitimate. But of course, there exists an important difference between privacy and secrecy. They open up and clarify themselves when you examine Kate. She clings to the old ways because she gets the rationale behind them. She knows that as a member of the royal family, she has public obligations, especially in important times, even if she's exhausted and just wants to go home. But Meghan rationalized them as mere guidelines, things she could select and choose depending on her whim, and it's only then that the questions begin. When do you violate every norm and dodge every standard practice, and turn everything into something overly complicated? When does the royal protocol suddenly become so hard to comply with? But the problem isn't just between those two people, it speaks to something deeper, much deeper, the very backbone of a monarchy itself. Now, that may all sound rather melodramatic, but it really does have some importance. You see, a monarchy currently has only one leg to stand on, their lineage. It's that simple. Their power, their authority, stems not from any vote, nor any amount of money they may have, nor any faction of devotion granted to them. No, not from any of that, per se. It comes solely from lineage, it comes solely from family, passed down through generations of generations, an unbroken line of succession, as it's called, that separates them not only from your run of the mill royal with a title, but separates them altogether on that very precipice of lineage, of family, of bloodline, of inheritance, as it were. So when there are questions of lineage itself, when there are questions of whether or not that bloodline, that heritage, was possibly compromised, with no definitive word on whether they indeed have any children that are even part of that potential line of succession, well, that's no longer gossip. That's a crisis, plain and simple. Because without an un-Meghan was made into the new face of modern royalty. The woman was supposed to be the one that would bring the monarchy into the 21st century. That was how it was meant to be. The two joining the family. But consider how things are today. Millions are questioning the core concept of royal succession, something you'd think was certain. The line of blood, something that was never supposed to be questioned, is under scrutiny today. And it's not only the people commenting from the comfort of their homes, it's the people who've been observing the story for decades, journalists who've worked to defend her. This is not progress. This is instability. Meghan says she is supported because she is able to visit her children on set. But Harry does not look like a protective father in these circumstances. He looks scared, and that is the difference. A concerned father protecting his children will likely answer a probing with confidence, possibly even understanding the interest the questions spark. Harry's behavior, the panic, the anger, the defensiveness, does not say security. It all falls on the understanding that he realizes the questions are legitimate, even if he does not know the correct responses to give. Every time they choose silence over clarity, every time they dodge a simple question, they're making it all worse. Not only for themselves, but for an entire monarchy. It's no longer even just about Harry and Meghan. It's about having any faith in the system whatsoever. Once one link is questioned, the suspicion spreads. Like a crack in a dam, water begins to flow and expand that crack. And then look ahead. What if these doubts don't go away? What if years from now, Archie or Lilibet are in a place where this succession issue really does become relevant? What if doubts are raised about their legitimacy? This problem does not get smaller with age. It gets exponentially larger and quicker. What's hard to stomach is that all of this was unnecessary. They could have done things the easy way. They could have introduced their children in the conventional way. No one was demanding anything out of the ordinary. But look at how complicated things are now. Mystery, where there should have been clarity. And so, they're living with the aftereffects of all that unnecessary complexity. So, let's talk about what's going on with their supposedly empire. And well, it's true. Their empire is falling apart and fast. Does anyone remember when Harry and Meghan were the hottest thing in entertainment? When streaming services were throwing money at them? When every media company wanted a piece of the Sussex brand? That's over now. The deals that looked like gold are now tarnishing. Netflix paid them millions. And what did they get? A documentary about grievances, and nothing else that anyone actually cared about. Spotify gave them a huge podcasting deal, which ended with the company's executives publicly blasting them for not delivering. When the people who pay you millions start blasting you, that's a problem. In Hollywood, the word being whispered is irreversible damage, and the industry has been merciless. Doors that swung open wildly are now quietly closing. Invites are drying up. Celebrity backing that used to roll in has stopped. Industry insiders know when a brand goes toxic, and no one wants to be on a sinking ship. Meghan spent years trying to make herself Hollywood royalty. A big influencer. Someone whose voice mattered. She thought that leaving the actual royal family would give her more freedom, more control, more power. Instead, she's watching that dream unravel. Projects aren't happening. The partnerships aren't being made. The cultural relevance she so desperately craved is slipping through her fingers. Harry's plight may be even more tragic. He was born a prince, to instant respect and worldwide recognition that most people could only dream of. And he threw it all away for what? A stalled media career. A life of fighting battles that no one asked him to fight. He thought his royal status would guarantee success wherever he went. But a title is nothing. Once people stop believing in you, when credibility is lost, when your word is no longer good, being a prince won't save you. If anything, it makes it worse, since the bar was set so much higher to begin with. The public that so fervently supported them, they're done. You can see it in social media, in the comments, in the performance of articles about them. People aren't even watching anymore. They're just not watching at all. The Sussex scandal that once promised such huge engagement barely registers anymore. And that's not hate. That's indifference. And indifference is far more damaging. The most astonishing part of this is how quickly it's happened. Only a few years ago, they embarked on their post-royal life with great fanfare. Big interviews, big deals, constant attention. For now, the phones aren't ringing. The offers dry up. And those who once answered your call are gone. It all comes down to one Gordian knot. Trust people just don't anymore. Harry and Meghan, their words, their motives. They don't trust the version of events they're selling. In entertainment, in media, in public life, when trust is lost, it is vicious to recapture and seldom fast. Harry became too sensitive, too quick to blame the press for every breakup, every setback. You can spin the story, you can issue a slew of statements, But if the core audience doesn't believe you, nothing takes hold. The empire they set out to build was hinged on one thing: their story, their truth. But when that truth keeps getting questioned, when doubt becomes the spine of your brand, everything built on it starts to fall. And that is exactly what we're seeing. Not a spectacular crash, but a slow, relentless unfurl that somehow feels more permanent. So where does that leave us? Because in the end, this isn't just about Archie and Lilibet as individual kids. It's about something larger: trust. And right now, that trust is hanging by a thread. Thinner with every dodge of a tough question, thinner with each added layer of secrecy surrounding their family. Monarchies don't endure on money, power, or tradition alone. They endure because people choose to believe in them. The public needs to trust that the system works, that bloodlines are real, that the message makes sense. Without that belief, the whole idea collapses. You can have the palaces, the crowns, the ceremonies, but without belief, it's only expensive theater. Meghan entered the royal orbit with tremendous promise. She was going to be that new voice, that contemporary force, the one to make the monarchy relevant for a whole new generation. People were genuinely hopeful. It was a tale of progress, forward motion, while still respecting what was. But look where we are. Instead of propping up the place, she has become the figure causing millions to question basic structures that always seemed so unshakable. What once seemed beyond question is now open to debate. That's not modernization, that's destabilization. Whether it's intentional or the result of a massive miscalculation, the end result is the same. Harry's position in all of this is almost tragic. He's fighting battles that don't have to be fought, creating crises that could have been solved by the simplest means of transparency. Every angry outburst, every defensive reaction, every attack on someone for asking honest questions, none of it does anything but make things worse. A person who has nothing to hide wouldn't act this way. A person who is confident wouldn't be so averse to having straightforward conversations. And maybe that's the real story behind all the headlines and the controversy. Maybe the reason they keep dodging direct answers is because they know exactly what those answers would say. Maybe all the smoke and mirrors and carefully crafted language is there because the truth doesn't work in their favor. Maybe the one thing they simply can't afford is transparency. At this point, they have very few options left to them. They can continue to do what they've been doing, dodging, deflecting, hoping people will eventually forget or stop caring. But we've already seen how that's working out. The questions aren't going away. They're multiplying, the doubts aren't fading, they're spreading. Or they could take the hard route. They could answer all of this in the open. They could give people the clarity they're asking for, either put the doubts to rest or be prepared to face whatever happens when they finally come clean and are fully transparent. But I think it's already been decided which route they're going to take, and it isn't the transparent one. Because if it were, we'd have already seen it by now. So what do you think? Is this about protecting privacy or hiding something much bigger? Leave your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear where you are on this. And if this video made you think, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, because there's a lot more to this story. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.